No worries.
All right, we are now recording. So I'll remind everyone to just keep your microphones turned off unless you need to speak, and to preserve bandwidth, you can also turn off your videos if you would like.
Well, good evening, everybody, or I think it's sort of afternoon, I guess. And the weather looks sort of lovely out there, but I do appreciate you coming to this Zoom session. I know a lot of you have questions, and we just so appreciate your patience as we try to work through this. As you know, we thought we had a plan for learning, but that plan has shifted multiple times throughout the summer and into the fall. So thank you for being here. We've had a lot of questions from individual people, and so what I think would be good is to just address some things starting out. And then I have a little slide to show you the differences between the options we're offering, and then we'll kind of move into questions if that sounds good. So I think the first thing to clarify is that at first we started out with in-school learning and homeschool. And we didn't really have an option for virtual learning because we didn't really think we would need it. We thought we're going to choose one or the other. And then as protocols changed, we realized we need to have a strong virtual component. And then we encountered parents that really didn't feel comfortable having their students in the building up front. And really, so that third option really became clear to us as we considered the needs of our families in Haines. So what I envision the virtual learning option to be is to address the needs of families that may be not comfortable starting out in the building. Maybe you think, oh, I want to have my kids in school, but I'm not really sure if I'm there yet. So that would be an option for you if you were just kind of wanting to hold back and see how we do with this rolling start. Also, there are families that have extenuating circumstances where they want their children to be in a classroom, like with their classroom teacher, but they can't be in person. And so we recognize that is maybe not a choice that parents would make normally, but there's other situations. I can think of several families who are out of town, and when they come back, they won't be able to come right into the building. And so they're thinking about that. Maybe you have to travel. Maybe there's a family situation where you're out for a month or two, and you just don't want your students to be behind. Then I think the virtual learning option is really good for that. And then also, I think the virtual learning option is good for parents who want to homeschool, but they just don't feel comfortable choosing the curriculum and grading the assignments and doing all of that. This would be a perfect option for that, because as you'll see, the virtual learning option is such that we actually connect the students to one of our classroom teachers. So that's sort of the need that we're addressing. And then thinking about workload, we had a lot of questions around that. And so as we've been learning about our systems and the Alaska Virtual School System, which we'll primarily be using in addition to Google Classroom, we talked about last quarter, we were trying to be very good about having a daily plan and all of that. So what we're doing differently this year is just planning in weekly chunks so that parents have a little bit more lead time, I guess, and that they can plan on a weekly basis instead of trying to wake up in the morning and say, okay, what does my student have to do today? So really looking at the pacing of this and the workload as weekly goals. And that goes across the board from kindergarten to 12th grade, regardless of what class your child might be taking. The other thing I wanted to mention is when all this started in March, we just tried to pull together all of these resources and put something together for families that really mirrored the classroom instruction. And I think we did a great job. I so appreciate the work that was put into that by Kim and Renee. But now we just have an option that we didn't have last year, and that is the Alaska Virtual School Learning Platform. And it's really an interactive platform that's designed for virtual learning. So if you looked at what we did last year, we tried to create this virtual learning and we did our best, but it wasn't ideal, right? We were just trying to get through. And so I think the benefit of this program is that it's designed for virtual learning. So you're going to see it's a lot more interactive. There's little videos. It's designed for a classroom experience outside the classroom. In school learning will definitely be more engaging and enriching, but at least this is the streamlined content that you know your child would need to stay on pace with their cohort. So say you're the parent that is going to be gone or maybe doesn't want to start the year in person. I'm sure you're thinking, I want my child to be learning the same things that the students are, their friends are in the school. And so this is one way to provide that to parents without them feeling overwhelmed, like, oh, I have to do this activity and then I have to do this activity. It's just a lot more streamlined, but there's opportunity for enrichment as well, if parents choose that. And then finally, I talked a little bit about the pacing, but I just want to reiterate that the pacing is generally going to be in line with the in-school learning. There might be a little adjustment, I would say, depending on the grade level and also the content area. So for example, math might be pretty straightforward, but for me, you know, I might do something different in Spanish in the classroom. So I might have an interactive activity and I might do some different enriching activities in the classroom, but the content delivery for the virtual learners would be that interactive portion that happens in the Alaska Virtual School class. And so the pacing will be generally the same and it'll end at the same point at the, like by quarter, I would say, but we don't want parents to be stressing out because they didn't get that Monday assignment done and so now their child is behind. I think the biggest consideration that we have and the concern and the care that we want to take with this as we implement it is that when your child is out for virtual learning, if you choose to have your child come back into the classroom, we want that to happen as seamlessly as possible so that you have the confidence and we have the confidence that we're doing right by our students and our families. So if I'm going to try to share my screen, I think I can do this all right. And I just want to show you a little slide. I think I've got this where it needs to be. So just give me a second. All right, so what will this look like? Excuse me just for a second. Okay, let's try that again. All right, so just to kind of review this, what will it look like? In-school learning is we're still going to start with a strong virtual learning component. And that will either be through Alaska Virtual School. I think all of the elementary grades for the most part have chosen to go with this platform, which I think is going to be great for parents because it's a single login and that's very helpful, I know. And then as you get higher in the grade level, we will see Google Classroom used from time to time just because teachers need to be able to deliver instruction in an interesting way and in a way that lends itself to that content area. And so as you get a little higher into middle school, possibly, and also high school, you're going to see some Google Classroom be used. In school learning, you've got classroom instruction. So this, even though we'll have a strong learning component or a virtual learning component, that doesn't mean that all the students are going to be sitting there in rows staring at the front of the room. So we want to get our systems in place with the first 2.5 weeks, but then what we envision is that time will be used to do, classroom activities, to have conversations, to have, have the instruction happen as organically as possible and away from the computer as much as possible. So I know you've probably heard a lot about you know, just our focus of outdoor learning and things like that. And we're going to try to be creative because we understand that this is going to be, it's going to be a tough year for students if they just are constantly looking at their computer screens, and we don't want that. So the content delivery piece is going to look different probably in the classroom. But on the virtual learning side, if you're at home, just know that we will have I want to show you actually an example of how that content is delivered via computer. So it may look different from in-school learning and virtual learning as far as content delivery. Live instruction clearly is preferred for in-school learning. And like I said, we're going to try to be really intentional about that. But we also recognize that there are protocols that we have to follow. For example, if a student gets sick, they can't come to school the next day unless they have a doctor's note or they have a negative COVID test. Otherwise, they have to stay out of the building for 10 days. And there's a lot more protocols like that that you'll see we'll be posting as they come through. I don't want to bore you with that, but just what in-school learning needs to be prepared for is the constant flux of students coming in and out of the classroom. And so over here with virtual learning, you'll see instruction and activities will be done through the same platforms, Alaska Virtual School and Google Classroom for the older grades. In the older grades, I just want to clarify there's a mix. And then, but work will be graded and feedback provided weekly by Haines school teachers. So it won't be a situation where the students will be checking in with their students every day, or that students will be checking in with their teachers every day. It'll be more like on a weekly basis. They'll get that feedback from the classroom teacher. And then parents, really, we ask that you partner with us because we're not going to have the ability to be following students on a daily basis and saying, are you getting your work done? But what we want to do from the teacher's side, the instructional side, is we want to provide something that's interactive, that lends itself to learning, and then the parents can partner with us to make sure that their students are on track, engaged in learning. And if parents want to augment what that curriculum is, then we would love that to happen. But I guess we want to make it manageable for parents and not overwhelming for students. And then I know I mentioned this, but I'm going to mention it again. We want students who move back into school to not be off pace with their cohort. I'm just going to go forward. I want to show you what this virtual platform looks like. But before I do, we have Lisa in the chat here. And if Lisa, you want to just talk a little bit about homeschool, I've got a few points here, but I'll just let you take this slide, Lisa.
Sure. And so the difference between virtual school and homeschool is that you, as the parent, would be the teacher in charge. You would be picking the curriculum. We don't have a set homeschool curriculum for the school. It says, here's the 5th grade curriculum. Go ahead and go teach this. Parents usually want the freedom to pick a curriculum that has to do with their students' style of learning and their interests. So with the homeschool, you would be developing your own learning plan for what you want to teach, pulling from different curriculums that are aligned with the Alaska state standards, and creating that. And you would be the one who would be teaching and be grading and doing all of the material that way. So probably just for the basis for today, that's going to be the big difference between the virtual learning platform and the homeschooling one.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'm just going to go back to this and I'm going to click on the school link. Can everybody see something that says buzz and a B, or do you still see my presentation? You're good?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Okay. So this is secondary. So I just log in here and I'm going to pull up a class that I've been working on, Spanish 1 class. And this is from the teacher's side, but I'm going to pull up so that your student is going to come into a class, and obviously just remember this is the high school level. But there'll be a little splash page here for their Spanish class. And Google Classroom isn't that different than this, where you have, if you log in, you see all of your classes that you're enrolled in. And so then if there's a welcome page and there's a start, and there's like a welcome page and then there's lessons, so you can see what the year entails. So you can see that these are all clickable, but I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes. I just want you to kind of get a sense of what the interface looks like. So we have 2 segments. Segment 1, which is semester 1. So we have 4 modules. So you'd be doing 2 modules a quarter. And then we just continue. And then segment 2, which is module 5, 6, and 7. So students can have a sense of what that looks like. Generally, teachers will hide that. Like, you can look at this and see what the year is about, but teachers will hide that, because what we don't want is we don't want students necessarily having, you know, just getting overwhelmed. So what we're planning on doing is working 1 module at a time. So there's a getting started piece, and it's pretty nice. Like, it sets up, it's just like if you are enrolled in this, if your child is enrolled with this, I would recommend that you would go through this with your child. And like I said, it's set up very clearly so that you just kind of go step by step through it. And every getting started page is going to look a little different depending on whether or not it's 1st grade or if it's 12th grade Spanish. And so there's all of this, there's a lot of details related to just getting started in the program. And it's geared towards whatever grade level you have. And I just want to mention that the curriculum in Alaska Virtual School is aligned to the national standards, which mirror the Alaska state standards pretty much. So I'm going to go back here, and we've talked about setting up some tech support webinars and things like that for our parents. But just so you can see, there's just everything about navigating through the course, the pace, all sorts of things like that. And then you can see there's several modules, but your teachers are going to hide the modules that we're not working on. So your student will probably get something that looks like, well, it's not going to look like this. It'll be much prettier. But I just want to pull up something that, this is Como Estás, and I apologize that I don't have an English version of this, but I just want you to see kind of what it looks like. So encounters in school are a great place to practice what you're learning. And they talk about these 3 students that are going to go on this Spanish journey together. And so this student is going to talk. There's a little note guide that students can download. And then there's a self-check down here, so students can learn, okay, what are the main characters? Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm understanding this. And you can see that students have the opportunity to interact with things on the page. And then it kind of goes through culture, and they're just going to kind of work their way through this module. And along the way, there'll be little activities that are attached and little instructions. So select the missing words to complete the conversation. And so you can listen to these, you can choose this, and if you get it wrong, it'll probably say, oh no, try again. So as you can see, this is really set up for a virtual learning experience. It's not us just cobbling a bunch of things together to try to recreate what we do in the classroom. I don't want to take too much time with this, but hopefully that gives you a sense of what that looks like. Giselle, were you going to talk a little bit about what your art instruction would look like?
I can. Kim, do you want me to show the elementary interface, or do you want to do it?
Why don't you go ahead and we'll look at it through your lens, and then I can show the 2nd grade curriculum if parents would like more of that as well.
Okay, so I'll just should I just do the same thing that Lily did and just share my screen and walk through?
I have it set up so you can do that.
Dun, dun, dun. Let's see. Ooh, can I share just Firefox? Oh, yes.
Oh, yours is so much prettier than mine, Giselle.
I clicked just share Firefox.
No, I just mean
Oh,
your
just
class.
Spanish. Okay, so this is just an idea of what at least this is what the art curriculum looks like, which I had a chance to go through, and it is really well fleshed out. It's very much aligned with the Alaska state standards and the national art standards, and they go through lots of great art history, even for the younger students, which I really like. And I try and do in the classroom is link up the projects with an artist, and that is really great in this program. So I was just playing around with kindergarten. I'm linking mine just so that I don't have so much work creating new curriculum, because I'm going to actually really try and use this curriculum in the classroom, but do a little bit bigger of a version of a piece of artwork in the classroom, because we'll have more utensils and tools, obviously. But this is kindergarten and first grade art. Can you see that, Lily?
Yes.
Okay. And this will probably change a little bit. I might put a little video for the landing page, like where you would start. And I'm only going to show modular 1, but just so you get an idea of what a whole modular looks like. Here you can see it says line, shape, color. All these have different artists in that they focus on, and an element of art. And then down at the bottom, it actually has art around the world, which is a really neat little modular as well, big one. Let's see if I just play this. No, I would like to play it. Let's play. Okay, so this is kindergarten and first grade. This first part is kind of geared more towards kindergarten, so it'll be a recap, but you'll be able to really click through. Sorry, I want that to go away. You can click through, and it's very simple for this first little bit of kindergarten art, asking lots of questions. It prompts you a lot. Let's see if I can get to, there's a studio time page that's going to talk about sketchbooks. I'm going to give all of the virtual curriculum students sketchbooks to take home, because they do use this a lot. So this is almost like introducing. I'm going to go back and show Kandinsky is the first artist that the kindergartners learn about, and it actually goes into who this artist is. It shows you their artwork. It talks about what they're going to learn. So this one is focused on line. And then it does actually have a couple really cool practices, talks about different types of line. And Kandinsky himself. And then what I'm going to try and do for mine, and I know some other elementary teachers are doing this as well, is uploading some extra videos. So you can insert a little video. So I just did this afternoon. It's a very quick video, but I did a Kandinsky lesson that we will do in the classroom. And you can see, I'm not going to go through the whole thing and create this 10-minute video on how to do it, but I will tell you what the tools we used were, and kind of do a little sped up version of the activity that we do in the classroom, so that you as a parent of the virtual student can see at least what we're doing. And so your student doesn't necessarily, if you have some of these tools at home, that you can recreate some of those. So that's just what that looks like. There's another artist that I added in from the first grade curriculum that I'm going to add my own video afterwards. But that's just kind of a quick glance. Does that help, Kim?
Yeah, and I think one thing I'd mention is up above right here on this page you're in, for instance.
Yeah.
We are working with kindergarten students, and so while the parents at home will work to support their learner at home, there is a speech tool, so this can be read to a kindergarten student as well.
Yes, up there. And there's a parent guide, pacing charts, all that good stuff in here.
And so for every grade level, there is that getting started. So I know, parents are wondering about how in the world am I going to learn how to do this? And every grade has that getting started that really walks you through how to use this particular platform for at-home learning.
Kim, would you like to add on to that at all for the elementary?
I certainly can. I had downloaded the second grade curriculum because that's what I was used to in the classroom. So I can certainly share that as well, give you a little different gauge. Okay, so this is, let me jump back here. So this is the teacher view again. So this is going to look slightly different from what you would see at home. And all my modules are turned on right now because I'm the teacher view. But like Lily had said, we don't want this to be overwhelming for families or students. So teachers will be turning off modules so kids aren't working way ahead of the class, and the pacing stays very similar to what's happening in the classroom. This is math, for instance, and so I'm going to just pull up the module is on adding and subtracting within 20. There's little pre-tests that students can take, and it just has a little walkthrough of that assessment with different tools up here for how to move about. These type of assessments are pre-graded and in some cases do need to be graded by the classroom teacher, so that would take place by the classroom teacher. Moving into a lesson. Giving you an overview, there's usually a little like warm-up activity, what the goal of the lesson is. Teachers focus on this a lot in the classroom too. We want our students to be able to say what they're learning about. And in this one, there's 1 of 6 slides. So you go to the next slide and it has a little activity and instructions and just an explanation of how to do this particular activity that they can read through or have read to them. Slide 2 of 6, and they just jump ahead working through these. So a lot of questions that we've received from families, which we'll get into here in a moment, is really how long does this all take? And what I would say to that is that, really it depends on the student. It could take anywhere from 10 to 45 minutes per subject area. And so you can see that this only had 6 modules. The one that Giselle had pulled up had 15 in it. So there's different lengths of the assignments, but you can work at your own pace to complete these over the duration of a week, if that makes sense. I think, let's see. So in the second grade, there's language arts, math, which most of the elementary in the classroom are going to be using this to guide their scope and sequence or their schedule throughout the school year. So they're going to be using this mostly. It's all answers to the standards. There's science, social studies, art, and Spanish is in there too. So we have, like in the second grade classroom, she's interested in trying Spanish. And so that might be a part of both in school and this virtual option. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And what I'd like to do right now is open it up to maybe more questions about the platform, generally speaking. And then we're going to address some of the questions that were sent in to myself, and then open it up for even more questions, because our goal is really to answer anything that you're curious about still, and how this is all going to work. So first, any questions about these particular platforms? Or would you like to see more about any area? And there is a chat box, or you can unmute yourself and just ask as well. This is the area in Zoom. I wish that they had some music you could play until someone was ready to talk.
Lucas Oman here, Noah's dad. I do have a quick question. All this is amazing, by the way, and I appreciate very much all of your hard work. I can't imagine how much work this is to support so many different, models. So we really appreciate that. The quizzing and testing and all those things, making sure that our students are on pace, are those through this Buzz platform or? Okay, I see nodding. All right, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. And then also with the teacher, I guess there'll be kind of a weekly powwow with the teacher to just make sure everything's on pace, I assume.
Yeah, so what that pacing is going to look like is teachers will open up about a week's worth of work. And that week, with that said, that week kind of equates to about, I'm going to say roughly 3 days, 3 days, full days worth. So your day isn't going to be necessarily chock full from 8 to 4. There's going to be room for you to supplement as a family the students' interests. So you can make a schedule that works for you and your family, and supplement as you wish for a week at a time.
So Kim, if I could just jump in, and Erica, I see your question up there, so don't think that we've forgotten that. But Sherry has a question: will every student get a sign-in for this platform so that if they get sick or need to switch from live to virtual, they can? And that's an absolute yes. So remember, that's the point of setting up slowly, because we want to make sure that all students, like the virtual learners and the in-school learners, are set up with that virtual component, so that if they do get sick or they have to be away, they can do that and it'll be seamless.
And I can maybe add a little bit more to that. As we've been working with the platform during in-service last week, is I think that's what most teachers are going to do, is just really dive in and use this every day for those beginning AB days, and really get kids to understand how to do it, just in case that they're sick, they have to go home. So they'll all get in-depth experience with it for sure those first 2 weeks.
And Lisa,
And can I just
sorry, there's a question from Vanessa that Lisa, maybe you could address.
Right, and so this was a question that came up. Vanessa wants to know, if you're doing the homeschool and not the virtual learning, can you do Giselle's art class virtually? And the answer would be yes for that. We're going to follow what we do for regular homeschoolers, which means K-5, you can participate live at school for your special classes like art, music, and PE. So in a sense, the virtual is our live classroom delivered at home. So you would be able to join in. We're not doing music, and PE is going to be different, but definitely you could join in the virtual art class. In the upper grades, in grades 6 through 12, you could sign up just like you could take physics in the high school, that you could do the same thing. So you could attend it either, you could attend it as a homeschool person, either live or virtually. That would just be for homeschool that way. So yes, you could do some of those more main subjects virtually.
Lisa, can you answer Erica's question? She said, is it possible to homeschool the first semester with the intention of coming back to the classroom for the second semester?
Okay, and you're not talking about the virtual learning. You're just talking about if you went full-time into the homeschool one where, right?
I think so. Is that right,
Okay.
Erica?
Yeah, just the homeschool
Just
version.
homeschool.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
so many to choose from, but
right, you can definitely do that. We probably, if you knew you were going to do that, because you get a certain amount of money to homeschool, you'd probably want to spend half to know that you're coming back in. Yeah.
And I think that Lily, you were going to speak too there for a second. Do you remember what you'd like to say?
Yes, I do. And it was the question about assessments. And I just wanted to say that one really nice thing about the Alaska virtual school system is that there are like checkpoints where checking for understanding. There's those little assignments. And so some of those actually give immediate feedback to the student. So you don't necessarily have to wait for every single assignment for the teacher to get back to you on that. So now the real assessments, the high quality end of unit type of assessments may require the teacher to actually review it. But it's just nice to know that some of these little checks for understanding activities give your students immediate feedback so they can understand what's going on. And we also talked about just the anxiety that can sometimes be around learning a new program. So we're very aware of that. And so there's options like allow the student to redo the assignment and things like that. And just know that we're going to work with our students in school and our virtual students as well, our distance learners, so that they're confident in the program and how things work before we start really, we want to ramp up slowly so that we do things well and that our students are not worried about the grade because maybe they just didn't know what the platform looks like. So we're really trying to think through some of those.
And I had asked for a bunch of questions, any questions that you may have. And so we've compiled those into a list. And Lily, maybe you and I could just tag team these questions so they don't get tired of one or the other of us talking. And then we'll start answering some of these other questions in the chat window because your question might be one that we already have an answer to that we've written down. So one of the first questions is how will parents get this information? Tiana has been amazing in the office contacting families to see what they'd like to do. I know many of you have reached out to Lisa, and Lisa's been great at answering all your questions as well. And we're very, very pleased that we can offer this question and answering session tonight to answer any other questions about the virtual platform. But ultimately, once you've made that decision, an email would go out to the families from the classroom teacher. So if you have a second grader and you want to enroll in the virtual component to begin with, the classroom teacher is going to send you an email that says, hello, I acknowledge you're taking virtual school. And they would give you the login information needed to get into that platform. And then they'd open up that week's worth of work. In addition to just this online format, a lot of it takes, there are times that the students can take a break and do more paperwork or what's called an interactive notebook. So there are some supplies that will be needed. Giselle mentioned a sketchbook. So those materials would need to get out to the families. And right now what we have planned is on Wednesday, in fact, most Wednesdays, but starting this Wednesday at 3 o'clock, there would be a pickup for some of those papers that are necessary to go home to complete this. Mrs. Getchell in second grade has created kind of her own document of getting started, so that would go home to those families that would like to or need to see that. So that's how you'll get the starting information to get started with this.
So maybe this is a good time for Lisa to put a plug in. I see some homeschooling questions coming across the pike. But Lisa, do you want to talk about your question and answer session that you're doing tomorrow?
Right, and some of these questions we can answer right now because it would be relevant to decide this. But tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a homeschool question and answer similar to this, but just all kinds of questions about the details of how one homeschools and so on. I'm just going to advertise after this meeting so people didn't get confused. But yeah, but I can answer a couple of those that are relative after Kim's done presenting.
Okay, so I see there's a question from M. Lund. Here is the platform through the Alaska Virtual School System. And so I think pretty much through the elementary grades, Kim, you can correct me on this, they're going to be primarily using Alaska Virtual School System. And then in the middle school, probably the majority will be Alaska Virtual School System with maybe some Google Classroom. And then in the high school, depending on the content area, there's a blend for that. So it'll either be Google Classroom or this Alaska Virtual School System. And I just want to reiterate that this Alaska Virtual School System is customizable. So just because they choose that doesn't mean that they're not going to supplement with some of the things that they normally do. So it's totally customizable, and just be aware of that.
And I can answer.
Emily, the platform question is really, yes, I use that word interchangeably. So a platform is a learning management system. So when I say platform, it means Alaska Virtual School. A platform is Google Classroom. So instead of always saying Alaska Virtual School, which is a mouthful, I just condense it to platform. So hopefully that answers your question.
And I can answer Kim Cunningham's question about our secondary students limited on the number of virtual classes they can attend if they're homeschoolers. They are a little bit limited in the sense that you have to take the majority of your classes through homeschool to be enrolled in the homeschool, because it is like a separate school even though it's in the district. So once you hit, like, if you hit 4 classes in either virtual or at school, you're considered a full-time on-site student. So you could technically take as many as you wanted, but at one point you would be a whole regular student, not a homeschool student. So we say 3 usually for the middle school and high school or for the high school that you could take.
Thank you, Lisa. And backing up a little bit, we're kind of all over the board here, but Alyssa, I had a question about when school starts 2 days a week, will students be doing virtual school on their days off at home? And to answer that question, the answer is no, not necessarily. This slow start will be 2 days of learning, whether you're 2 days of learning a week, whether you're in this building or you're virtual.
Slow start.
Slow start, slow start. Lily, do you want to take question number 2 on our paper copy?
Okay, how is it different from last spring? I think I mentioned this before, but I'll just say it again. Last spring, we didn't have any lead time to prepare. And so it was really about us just trying to pull together whatever we could find to deliver instruction to finish out the year. So there were a lot of different logins. I know that was difficult, particularly in the elementary grades. I think the higher you get, like in secondary grades, we're used to providing that instruction online because students are constantly traveling for activities. But the difference is really that it's going to look different because we do have access to this learning platform that I think is going to make things really a lot easier for families. So you're not going to be necessarily trying to get your second grade student to log into, 6 different technology platforms or applications. It should all be embedded in this Alaska Virtual School or the Google Classroom. And it doesn't mean that we wouldn't augment with other technology, but I think that's the biggest difference. And we're prepared. We have time. We have lead time. So we've been thinking about this all summer.
And I think the other biggest thing is, you had spoke to this as well, is that you'll get a week's worth of assignments, and
Oh,
you
yes.
create your own schedule, so you don't have to wait till 8:30 to get a Bloom's text that may or may not open up for you, that opens up a test page that may or may not work for you, that takes you then again somewhere else. So you'll have the ability to create your own schedule with the virtual platform. We had a question that says, can you tell me what the expectation is for students who are doing in-school learning versus distance learning, and what that workload looks like? And I guess the message here would be is the virtual learning is going to be more streamlined, allowing families time to supplement as they wish with additional activities. The pacing needs to be similar to the classroom, so when those weeks worth of activities open up, those activities will need to be done, but it's more the pacing of what's right for your family. Yeah, and then at the high school level, part of that pacing that's really important is at the high school level, there's activities that students need to maintain certain grades for and be accountable for to participate in those activities.
And I think that's a good plug. It's a good time for me to just mention that if you're in homeschool or you're a virtual learner or you're in school, activities, the goal for activities at the in high school, that high school activities, all that got shut down last quarter or fourth quarter last year. And we're seeing how important it is for students to be active and stay connected. And with that in mind, we are going to try to keep activities going, even if it's intramurals, even if they can't even go outside of this town to that that's really important. And so it'll be nice to have that as a carrot, sort of to keep some students engaged that might otherwise not, momentum or the incentive to keep going. And we're looking at options for our middle schoolers too, because we want them to feel that same sense of connection through activities, as long as we can do so safely.
Pam, you had a question. In high school, are virtual students and in-school students following the same classroom with 7-period schedule? The answer to that is no. So they'll have the same, they can have kind of similar class, they can be enrolled in the same classes, but they don't have to be logged in at the same time. So at first period from 8:20 to 9 o'clock, let's say, a student wouldn't have to be in Spanish class during that time, the exact time, and following the same exact schedule. But they would have the same classes. Sorry.
Yeah, and just being able to offer classes asynchronously, I think, is important, because as we all know, there's just times where you want your students off of the computer. And so having it asynchronous, I think, is pretty important for parents.
And Lily, what's asynchronous mean?
Asynchronous means that you do not have to connect to the class at the same time that the teacher is teaching it.
Great.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
So I guess what I was getting at is that sometimes you can't take Spanish this semester or quarter because it conflicts with some math class that you're required to take. So if you're a virtual student rather than an in-school student, do you have this extra option to be taking classes that are conflicting with others?
That's a great question. And yes, you would be able to, because it's not tied into the time, the schedule.
But what if they came back into the school and now they have Spanish the same time as English 1, which they have to take? That would cause a problem.
Then it would cause a problem at that point. We'd have to probably drop one and pick it up later.
Right.
Point, Lisa.
Maybe that's a better question for me with Miss Brumfield, I guess, at the orientation, or with somebody okay. All right. Thanks for that.
And Pam, we'll do a little bit more extra investigating too. There, This is all new to us as well, so we'll investigate that question too and get you a better answer via email.
Thanks.
Lily, while I'm writing down her question, would you take number 4?
I think someone maybe came in to.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Okay, so a parent asked if any of the learning is required to be virtual. Is the school planning on providing internet services for families? And at this time, we are not offering to pay for internet at home to do this virtual platform. And deadlines are there any deadlines that I should be aware of? And I think what the parent was asking really was if they start in virtual school, can they bounce back into in-school learning? And the answer is yes. If they start with in-school learning and they need to go to virtual school, there's no deadline. Really, the only exception to this rule is the homeschool. And so, Lisa, I'll let you speak to that deadline of October 1st.
Right, so usually the individual learning plans are due on September 11th, and then enrolling in by the 1st of October to get the full student allotment to pay for curriculum. And speaking of that, just kind of wanted to follow up with Laura. I was having a question about the minimum and maximum that you could take virtually. How our program runs is that you get like $2,800 for your allotment to pay for your curriculum in the high school, and it's lower in the lower grades. And you get 1 free class to take on site, or that would also translate to 1 virtual class. And each class you add after that has a cost of $300 taken assigned to it, because then you're here with our teachers teaching us. So we would move money from your $2,800 allotment of $300 and move it over to the on-site school. So for each one that you pick after that. So at one point, if you're taking 3 classes virtually or on-site 4 classes, then the funding will change over to be just considered a full-time on-site person. So that's kind of how that goes with how many classes you can or cannot take. You can take as many as you want, it would affect your money and then what your standing is for what kind of student or what school you're really enrolled in, if that makes sense.
So Kim, should I answer 6?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay, so the question was, can students switch between online and in-person within the semester? And the simple answer to that is yes, because there are going to be a myriad of reasons why students may have to be out of the building. So that's the goal here, is continuity of learning for students. So yes, they would be able to. Again, some parents may just feel like they're not quite comfortable sending their students into the building at the start, but they might feel more comfortable once they see us up and running. Maybe quarantine issues, maybe family issues. So we recognize that there's going to be a lot of flux here, and we want to support parents and students in providing the very best education, and so they don't feel like they're behind or they lose their motivation.
And I'm backing up to the group chat. There was a question, will there be much as far as downloadable assignments in the virtual platform? The simple answer to that is yes. There are assignments that you can download. There is paperwork, like just good old classic pen and paper assignments that can be completed as well. And we are able to work with families if they don't have printers to get those printables to you. Like I said, on Wednesdays, or we can work some other system out if that just once a week pickup is not working for families. And is the virtual completely non-live? And Lily spoke to this a little bit. Yes, it is all in that platform, ready for when you are. Is there a live feed of the classroom activities? There will not be a live feed of the classroom activities. There may be, like you saw with Giselle, she does a little live recording that's uploaded into the Alaska Virtual School platform, but nothing that students would need to come to at a set time to watch a live recording of the class.
Hey, Kim.
Yeah.
There is a question in the chat box that kind of follows that up about meeting with teachers. And it's virtual learners, how often will a student meet with teachers? Maybe you can address that really quick while you're on the subject.
Yes, so we will have times available for the first couple weeks on Wednesdays in the afternoons for teachers to meet with the virtual learning families. And then from 2:15 until 4 in the afternoon as well.
So that kind of segues into a question, who will be teaching? And I think we covered it, but I just want to make sure that you understand that for virtual learners, the curriculum will be set out by the classroom teacher. And Sarah, I appreciate your comment there in the chat box. There'll be a protocol to follow. And yes, what we don't want is for people to be hopping in and out randomly, but we need to be prepared for students to be in and out, and it may not even be by choice. It could just be because we have to follow the protocols. So we want to keep that consistency as much as possible, but classroom teachers are responsible for virtual learners, and they'll be checking in with them regularly, hopefully on a weekly basis. But for virtual learners, really the teaching and the learning is a partnership between parents and teachers, as far as just making sure that those students are continually on pace, if that makes sense. So it really is more of a partnership. There's more fluidity, there's more freedom of scheduling for parents, but then more falls on the parents just to make sure their students are on pace. Whereas with the in-school learners, there's more, that falls on the classroom teacher a bit more.
And there may be time to time too that the paras are helping answer some just general questions and helping provide supports as well for our virtual learners. I spoke to this, how long daily will they be required to be on the computer? Really, that really depends on the grade level and the student themselves. For any of you who have, 2 children or more, that every child is so different. And so one assignment might take one student 20 minutes, and the same exact assignment might take another student 40 minutes to complete. So roughly what we're thinking is each subject area assignment should take roughly between 10 to 45 minutes per subject, per lesson.
And Kim,
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Giselle.
I felt like this follows that up, but you keep saying 10 to 45 minutes. But I think what is also really important, especially in these first couple weeks, is that we're only releasing a week's worth of content, which really is just 2 days of learning, and that the lessons themselves are following the in-class pace, so that we're not, I don't know, it's hard to estimate how long that day would take for your, or that day's content would take for your student, but that we're just releasing, we talked about this with the elementary teachers, we're just releasing those, it's essentially for the first 2.5 weeks, it's really just 5 days of content because of that A-B schedule.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And also these first 2 weeks until we have more direction come September 1st after the board meeting, these first few weeks, there'll be 5 instructional days per group. And at the elementary and the high school level, it's really going to be a lot more about getting started and getting familiar with the virtual platform and warming up to the idea of using it, rather than jumping right in with assignments and going for it.
Kim, there's a question on like 20. Will the virtual school look like BYU online classes, or will it be paced as in a regular classroom? And I don't know how many parents on here have students in the secondary grades, but I just want to make sure that you understand there'll be a pacing component that we offer. It's not, you won't have this packaged class that the student necessarily rushes through in 3 weeks. But the modules will be delivered at the same pace as they're being delivered in the classroom, or the Google Classroom assignments will be delivered in the same pace, so that it just allows for that movement back and forth if necessary.
There was a question about what will the socialization piece look like. That socialization piece, if you're a virtual learner, that will be up to the families to provide that social piece. And then, of course, in the secondary level, students are welcome to attend the activities and encouraged to attend activities, because it's such a strong component of our school. The next question is, in the high school, generally we charge $100 for the computer rental fee if you're in school to use the computer for students to take home back and forth. So in school, we ask for that fee. If you're a virtual learner at the high school level, we will ask for that fee as well. At the elementary level, if you need a device, one can be provided. We're still working on that part of it. But keep in mind that if you are on our migrant list, that those fees are covered by Migrant Ed program.
I see that we're at 5:36, so I want to be respectful of parents' time. Kim, I'm just scanning down this list, and it kind of looks like we've addressed a lot of these. I wonder if we should just, again, see if anybody has any other specific questions that we haven't addressed.
I think one big one, Lily, that should be addressed is the specials attendance. Whether virtual learners can attend to art and music and PE, library class times, that kind of thing. Number 18.
Oh, yes. Okay, so for virtual learners, the idea, what we don't want is, we don't want a situation that just becomes problematic, where we have students choosing to take some classes and not others as a virtual learner, because there's already enough that we're trying to accommodate for. So for virtual learners, they would not attend the specials unless those specials are provided in a virtual way, if that makes sense. And I want to be very clear that that's different than what the homeschool offers. Lisa, you've already mentioned that. But the idea here is not to prevent students from participating, but just to make things manageable and to make sure that we're not over-promising for our capacity. Because right now, the purpose of our rolling start is really just to make sure that we can keep kids engaged in learning, but also do so safely. And I think that's probably all of our parent concerns as well. So that's where we are with that.
And one more I'd like to answer for the benefit of the whole is Sped Supports. So if you choose to do the virtual learning component, Sped Supports would still be provided to those students. Our OT and speech will be online components. That's what speech has been online now for a couple of years, and we're going to try the OT online this year as well. And PE can be accommodated. And I keep saying I have one more question to answer, but I still have one more question to answer. And I still want to be respectful of everyone's time. I just want to answer all the questions that actually came into us. And that will be, will the virtual school program also be requested to pay the $30 of classroom school supplies? And the answer to that is yes. Think of virtual learning, you know, as just an extension of our building, really, if you will. And so because we can send some of those supplies home to you, or if your student comes back into the building, our teachers will be prepared to have those supplies ready and waiting to either be with you at home or in the classroom where those supplies are needed. So that $30 fee that is asked for in lieu of you actually going out and buying supplies in grades K through 5 would still, yes, need to be paid. And now we can turn it open over to any other questions you may have that we might not have answered, or any more questions that we might still need to figure out an answer for.
I have a question. For the kids with IEPs, could they be enrolled in the homeschooling and still get help from the school specialist?
Yes, we've had homeschoolers before who have IEPs, and depending on which grade they're in, like, so if they're K5, Tammy Hamilton is part of helping out create the individual learning plan to make sure that all of the for any learning disabilities that you're picking the right curriculum, and that she still, sometimes kids will come in and work with her, or can also do it virtually. So that would also be supported.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Anyone? Feel free to type them into the chat box.
Kim, I had another question about art supplies that that I am for, like, I went through a lot of the virtual art curriculum, and they do rely heavily on just using a sketchbook and drawing and doing activities like that. So what I did create was sketchbooks for all of the art students that want to take, that are choosing the virtual option. But there's really, I mean, it's most of my activities that I'm going to be doing this fall, especially with secondary, are going to be drawing, and that's where it'll be mostly pencil, pen, and paper, and just trying to streamline that as best I can, especially for those older students, to be focusing on those, and then also kind of seeing what's available to them.
Great, thank you.
And I just want to reiterate, just looking at all the people here tonight, I just so appreciate being a part of a community where parents are engaged in their children's success. And I look at the group that I see here, and it's heartening to see you all here, because I know you're committed to seeing your students, your children be successful and continue learning and be safe as possible. And we just appreciate that every family has a difficult decision, because we don't know what the future holds. But looking at this group, I just so appreciate the opportunity to work with you. And I know Kim and I and all of the staff here are excited for the year. And we're excited to be back together, whether that's virtually, whether that's homeschool, or whether that's in school. We're here and we're ready to get started. And I see, Roy, you have your video camera on, so I'm sure you have something inspiring to say.
I don't know if it's inspiring, but I just want to say thank you all for putting this on tonight. I think it was really helpful. Thanks to all of our parents and visitors who were here to watch this. And I'm sure that you'll have more questions as time goes on. You know, I liken this year to a trip to Anchorage, in that there's several ways to get there from Haines, right? You can fly, there's several ways to drive, and so forth. And that's going to be the 2021 school year. It's going to be we're all going to be trying to reach the same destination, but we might have a different way of getting there. And we want to support your options as families and as your educational resource. And any one of these that you choose supports our school district. And, we'll support all of our families no matter what they choose. But any one of the, the in-person, the virtual, or the homeschool option supports our school and the long-term vision that we have. And this certainly was not anything that we had planned for, the virtual environment and so forth. Our goal is to get more outside and do more experiential based things. And that's our long-term vision. To get through the year and do it effectively and well and with continuity and consistency and make it meaningful for all of us, I think we're landing on some places that are going to be doable and provide options for families that they need. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for supporting us, for helping us. If we can help you in any way, let us know. And I'm really looking forward to the school year ahead. As different as it may look, this is our time, and we're stepping up and doing the best that we can. And we know that all of our families are too. So thank you.
Yes, it is being recorded and it'll be posted. I could probably post this on the school website for other families who weren't able to make it tonight to be able to listen to.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
And I'll stay on the line just in case you want to ask a question for a little bit longer.
And I'll have it posted, have Mr. McPeters post on our social media, the one for tomorrow, which will just be all about homeschool.
Thank you, Lisa.
Giselle, thank you very much for your time tonight. It's always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. I did have a good question about supplies, but we could talk more about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Looks like everyone's signing off. Doesn't look like maybe there's any questions left. All right, everybody. I think I'll end this session. Thank you again.
Thanks, Kim.